everyone. Thank you for being here. So a quick background of me. I'm Franco. I'm a group engineering lead at giffgaff. My background is in software development, mainly with a little bit of AI. But I've been working basically in telecoms for most of my career. And today I want to talk about a problem that I think many of us have basically faced at one point or another. And part of it is balancing immediate value delivery with sustainable long-term capabilities. So what do we mean by this? So if you've worked in a big environment, big company like a corporate or a company that has aged a bit over time, we probably find something like this familiar. That the story of the architecture there started with some application that kept growing, added a database, added some more logic, another database to the same application, more logic, now bypassing some of the logic, and now having a certain cron jobs, batches, exports. All this probably sounds quite familiar. And then an attempt came in to try and modernize it. So we built some more microservices around it. But we still needed to support the old. So we ended up with some backfilling to the old. And even more services, and now we end up with quite a bit of a complicated architecture. So we end up with new services that are backfilling or proxying to the old legacy platform. New features can break a delicate balance. We would be afraid to do new features in it. And this means that a small idea suddenly becomes a big effort to do. And why does this happen? Why did we get to this point? And it's probably a similar situation, right? So quick hacks, short-term wins, commercial pressure, we need to get something out there quickly, and we're afraid of doing changes, so instead we keep adding more and more to that stack rather than actually solving it. So the two main problems, designing a new end-to-end architecture that replaces all of the old functionality becomes a huge waterfall project and takes years, returning little commercial value. And designing individual external satellite services, bridging with the old stack, will add more chaos to the mess. So how can we fix this? Let's focus on, one, a long-term vision with an incremental plan within it, performing frequent cycles that return value. And we'll talk about this shortly. And the second part is your API and event contracts that are also forward compatible. So, and a nice analogy that I like to work with is the idea of a cake slice. So imagine this cake, and what you have is you want to do a new feature, you want to do a new launch, or you are migrating from an old stack to a new stack. Rather than just work on one individual module on its own, instead try to think about an end-to-end functionality that takes you and allows you to roll out something that actually works end-to-end. And how do we do this? Obviously, you need to start with what is the kind of cake you want to have. That's your starting point. You need to have a vision of where you want to go. What is the thinnest slice you can cut where you still taste all the layers? You'll notice I play along quite well with this analogy here. Obviously, you need to cut it. Get enough ingredients to bake that slice alone. And what we'll find is that each slice gives us an end-to-end version of a working solution. Not of one component, but of the full solution, like I was saying. A solution that you know how to keep evolving one slice at a time. That's why you need that longer-term plan. You want to know what the cake looks like. And eventually, you want that each slice returns value, which means you start to learn from it. You start to get insight or metrics. Where are your gaps? Where did your assumptions go wrong? You might also start generating revenue along the way, which means your commercial value comes in sooner. Your project is more sustainable. And the other topic relating to it is, I mentioned API contracts and forward compatibility. So we have a tendency when we build an initial version of a product, the MVP, to literally take all the shortcuts, even though we know that in a year from now or 2 months from now, we will have a version 2 or a version 3, because we know that bitter cake. But we take shortcuts like on the left-hand side, where in the example of a shopping cart, in this example here, we have a product which is not a product list, but it's not an array. It serves the MVP, but it's not actually forward compatible. Things like the price is just one value. The owner is just a string at that point. But we know that we eventually want to get to that side on the right. And that side on the right allows us to actually grow more. So these are the kind of problems to keep in mind when doing API design. On the other hand, you need to be a bit careful about over-engineering it, because otherwise you end up with a very complicated API that you'll never really make proper use of it. So in short, do keep in mind where you want to go before designing your API spec. A few other points on the API is the idea of a common language model. And what this means is if you've got multiple parts in your software stack, not just in this application, but even outside of it, try to have one way of representing a particular entity that has a meaning to the business. So the definition of a user, for example, should not be presented outside of your services in different formats based on which service you want to. Otherwise, you end up with a lot of mappers, a lot of translations. Sure, internally in your implementation, do whatever you want, but your contracts are very important here. And you start to see that reusability as we kept iterating in future versions of our API. Now, I want to bring a bit of a use case that we had at work last year. So we wanted to launch airtime travel add-ons at giffgaff. So although we are a mobile network, we did not have the ability to buy travel data when you were abroad. And we said, let's take this approach for it. So we sliced it down. But in each slice, we wanted to have something that really worked end-to-end. So slice 1, we added some feature words, we configured the basic structure of the product, and we started to sell it immediately to employees internally. Went into slice 2, a few more improvements. We have a small pool of test users externally that we trust, and that went out there. Within slice 3, we basically launched and full launched slice 4. With this approach, we had, in just 3 weeks, we started to get feedback. We immediately knew what was working, what didn't work, not just technically, but even as a product. And within around 7 weeks, this took us to full launch. And based on these learnings, we're basically now taking it to a much bigger scale. So we have that monolith and legacy problem I started with. And we want to take that same approach on a full scale of our airtime products and how we do the full management of airtime. And we're taking the same principle. So right now, we're basically just finished the first group over there, where we have functional end-to-end checkouts and recurrences. Right now, it's targeting only stuff. We're not yet changing directly the product, but we're solving the technical problem that we've been carrying for a very long time. And moving on with the following slices as seen here, the idea is always in each iteration we have something end-to-end that is fully usable. So closing tips, end-to-end slices, but always remember the full cake. Forward compatible API contracts, obviously within reason, otherwise you end up over-engineering it. And common shared language model and APIs. Do not expose internals or vendor specificity. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a question for Franco at all? If I can see, yes.
Hi, thank you, Franco. Great talk. Lots of interesting points to mold over. My question is, when you're taking a slice, should I include cross-cutting capabilities, for example, security and backup, or is that bloating that slice too much?
The short answer is yes, because the slice is basically your end-to-end. You're able to go to production, to sell, and do it end-to-end. Now, obviously, you might be missing some features, so maybe you don't want to sell it too publicly yet. Ultimately, you know your business best, so you know where you want to do the trade-offs. Because it will still be an incremental improvement you will do across your slices. But try to get the end-to-end spectrum. Doesn't mean you'll pull in all the features of each part of the spectrum in the first slice.
Okay, can we have a round of applause for Franco, please?